Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my show Camera Tuesday. In today's episode, we're gonna take a look at Blackmagic URSA Mini Pro G2. So let's dive right into it. So before we understand it more, we have to understand what the hell it is. So you have to understand this is a version 2. So be aware, you may find this camera for very cheap, but generally this will be version 1. So please pay attention to it. G2 we are talking about, latest version. Now this started shipping just recently, basically mid 2019. So be aware of this. Now, what is this camera? This camera is basically hybrid between broadcast camera and cinema camera. Now, those two, again, they are camera, but they have completely different requirements. So this camera is like a hybrid. It can do bit of both. Now, of course, it's not the latest and greatest in terms of broadcasting camera, not latest and greatest in terms of cinema camera, but it can take care of a much wider, basically use case scenario. It can handle much wider. So this is very crucial. Now, most cameras generally have interchangeable lens cameras. So basically you can change the lens out. This puppy goes one step further. It has interchangeable lens mount itself. Basically you can change the mount itself. Now again, that is common in very high-end Red Apex and all that, but they are very expensive. On this price point, as in $6,000, this is kind of very cheap. So you can get PL mount, you can get EL mount, you can get Nikon mount. So those are very awesome options you can get. So that is pretty interesting. Now the sole reason why everybody is so hyped up about this is because it has 15 stops of dynamic range. Now if you are familiar with dynamic range, you must understand mobile can barely give you 8. Even if the sensor can do like, let's say 10, 12, the data compression like flat out destroys it. Now getting 12 bit of 12 stop of dynamic range, that's very good. And if you are exposing your thing correctly, that's more than good enough. But the moment you start to go 14, now you have a lot of breathing room. Basically you can color grade much more aggressively, you can push things a bit more comfortably. Now if you are talking about 15 stops of dynamic range, now that's a completely different ball game. That is such a good that if your exposure is anywhere near close to be okay, usable, the camera is like, I got this. So basically your skies won't be blown out, your shadows won't be black. So that's pretty amazing. Now 14 to 15 may not sound that big of a jump, but that gives you one extra breathing room. Basically you're like, okay, my exposure was not just right, but again, it's more than good enough, because the dynamic range will help you recover the detail during post-production. So these are the whole idea. So you can do broadcasting, you can do cinema, and you can change whatever lens mount you need. Basically, let's say for some side of a run and gun shooting, you may require Canon lenses. For some side of more artistic fire, you may want to use the Nikon lenses. So you have the choice, but it is a $6,000 camera. So why this camera is? Now this is a raw recording camera. You have to understand every sensor, even the sensor that is in your mobile phone, it's ludicrously powerful. The reason why we don't extract that much data out of it, A, it heats it up, B, what the hell you gonna do with that data? So you have to understand, even a tiny mobile phone camera sensor can produce upwards of few gigabytes per second. That's what high-speed camera do. That's what a high-speed camera can literally read off that fast. Of course, it also has to cool it. So let's say even if you figured out the cooling, the problem would be the data bandwidth would be too high. So that creates a paradox. So generally mobile companies like, okay, let's not use it. So same sensor can be found in many pro level video camera, where you can have the same sensor, but you will have like 150 megabits per second read and write, read speed from the sensor. That will allow much more breathing room for the sensor. So sensors are pretty amazing. Right now, as of now, we know how to make pretty awesome sensors. Problem is the bandwidth. Like sensor requires a lot of data. So generally we created a scenario where we have raw recording. Now what does that raw do? Same as in your basically image. Basically you can change color, you can change white balance, you can change hue, you can change tone, you can change everything without destroying the image. Basically you can not only recover it, but if you change it properly, you will not even feel it that you have changed it. So basically, let's say that you are watching Matrix. Matrix has a bit of green tint. Now again, that green tint should be subtle. It should not, after watching few seconds, you should forget about it. Oh, there was a green tint about this. But if you did it from a cheap camera with low bandwidth, it is simply, you change it, everything starts to run, because it will not have nuance. This camera for $6,000 is a very amazing camera that it allows you to raw record. Now raw recording is a very energy intensive system in terms of processing, in terms of data consumption. So generally raw is taken and compressed in multiple ratio. 1:1 would be uncompressed, just take it and go. Then you will be 3:1, there will be 6:1, depending on all of them does retain like more than good enough amount of data. So most people are saying like, hey, 8:1 or 16:1, more than good enough. You're gonna recover the data, you can change the highlight, shadow, all that without destroying it. But if you really want to stretch it it out to IMAX screen, I would urge you to go with less compression. So for $6,000, this is quite amazing. However, this no longer as amazing as it used to be, because Blackmagic themselves released a camera that can do raw recording at 1500. So it is quite amazing, but not as amazing because Blackmagic themselves has created this. However, this is very adaptable. Now, this is the critical aspect. Every single thing about this camera is designed to appeal to most amount of people. Basically, having this second screen. Now, you might be like, why the heck you want to have second screen? Now, this second screen, you can simply close it and have somebody else watching the camera from far and just understanding whether the camera is working, recording or not, audio levels and all that. Now, why would that happen? Simply because in broadcast scenario, many times you may not have as many cameramen as you need. So many cameras will be just unmanned. You will simply have SDI cable coming out of it and feeding into the switcher. To understand more about SDI, please check my video in detail about it here. So in those sort of scenario, having this kind of second screen is very helpful. Because if you directly try to see like a full image in 4-inch screen, you won't be able to read that. And if you have like, let's say, big screen and all that, it will cast extra light. So for this reason, you want something small, nimble, and all these buttons and control, this is necessary for video editing. Run and gun shooting, you simply don't have the luxury. Okay, I'm gonna go into this menu, I'm gonna go into this sub menu, then in sub menu, then I'm gonna change the audio level. That's not how it works. You can directly change it. And they took a lot of feedback from their generation 1 and they have added a lot of extra buttons. So this is why this Gen 2 is so expensive. So it is very adaptable. Now, adaptable is not only limited to the fact that you can change the lens mount, the fact that you can control the camera like wirelessly, the fact that you have second screen. It's also the fact that you can have basically whichever battery mount you need. So you can have V mount, tip-tap mount, you can directly change the ND filter. This is also interesting. It has inbuilt ND filter, which is quite amazing. And it can do 4K 60 frames per second. There are many cinema camera, but they can, most of them only limited to 4K 30 frames per second. Even though they can do 4K 60 frames per second, the bandwidth goes down drastically. So you cannot many times have raw recording at 60 frames per second. So please look into the fine details. So this aspect that it can do 4K 60, it's quite amazing. And because it has 15 stops of dynamic, it allows it to get HDR qualification. Now this is very crucial. If you are making a TV show for, let's say, Netflix and all that, they want to give you stamps. Now that stamp will be HD stamp, 4K stamp, HDR stamp, 10-bit stamp, whatever. All those stamps require a certain amount of data to be in present. So to get the highest number of stamp, your camera must be good enough. So Netflix has a list of cameras. Like if you are shooting with this camera, you will by default get it. Of course, unless you are compressing the too much. If you have good pipeline, these cameras should give you the rating. This camera is gets that done. Now if you are in broadcast industry, you don't want to deal with batteries, you can directly have XLR power input, so that way you can directly keep it running 24/7. It also allows high frame rate. Now high frame rate is not too high, it can only go to 150 frame per second, but 150 frame per second at 4K uncropped, that is quite amazing. And it's also run and gun, every aspect of it. Basically you can get viewfinder, you can get shoulder mount, everything about it is built in such a way that you can do a lot of things with one tool. One of these, you can take care of a bit of broadcasting, you can take care of a bit of podcasting, you can take care of a bit of run and gun documentary, and you can make movie out of it. So that is why they are building it. Now, what are the great parts of it? Okay, that's just a camera. What are the great parts of it? Why you should buy this rather than something else? First, it has 4-inch fold-out screen. Now, many cameras flat out does not come with any screen, so you have to buy something external. Now, in a run-and-gun scenario, that's not advisable. So, having a dedicated inbuilt 4-inch good quality screen with touchscreen capability is quite amazing. Flat out right there, many cameras will fail because there are many cameras that are run-and-gun only, but they don't have like a 4-inch screen. Many cameras are broadcast only, but they expect you to buy another monitor. In cinema, it is expected of you to buy another monitor. So having this inbuilt is quite amazing. It has Bluetooth control. Now, why Bluetooth control matters that much? If you can do that over Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi consumes battery on both parties. Your camera battery will also die quicker, your mobile battery will die quicker. Bluetooth is low energy, so that's also interesting. Now, that's not too much of a big deal, but it's a unique add-on. Now, this is the critical aspect. It has 12G SDI support. SDI has many ratings, like 3G SDI means full HD, there is 6G, that is 4K, there is 12G, which is simply 4K 60 frame per second. That means this camera right now, at this point in time, you can just connect the SDI, of course, as long as you have the switcher and a whole of the pipeline that can handle 4K 60 frame per second, and you can do live broadcasting of, let's say, Olympic or Oscars and all that. So that is why I said this camera is like a bridge between cinema and basically broadcasting. This is very critical. Having 12G SDI, that is very rare at this point specifically. Now, it also has pro level audio. Now, having that pro level audio also comes with a lot of interesting aspect. Like you can get a mini microphone that has digital audio output. Now, digital audio output has a problem that you have to store it directly. This camera supports that. That simply means if you have a, let's say, microphone that has AES output, it will directly record it. Why bother doing that? Simply, it will not add any noise from your gain control of the camera. It will directly store the digital signal. That is why it is also amazing. So they took some extra time designing the audio interface, and you can have phantom power and all that, analog control and all that. So these are pretty good audio system. Like this is usable in the field. And direct external record. Now this is very good for indie user, because I do hate one thing about it, and I'll talk more about that. But you can right now buy very good quality like micro USB, USB-C SSDs that are very powerful, as in like they can handle 600 Mbps read and write. So you can use one of those and directly record onto that. Benefit of that, in if you are doing let's say very quick edits and all that, you can directly take the recording from the SSD, just plug it into your laptop and directly edit. So that's a pretty amazing thing. So these are the great aspects of it. Are there any bad side of it? Yes, one bad thing that I simply cannot understand, that's simply done for cost saving, is they're still sticking to CFast 2.0. Now CFast 2.0 simply died. CFast is now being replaced by CFast Express, which is basically XQD. To understand this mumbo jumbo, just look at this video about XQD versus CFast. So basically what happened is CFast started to lose and XQD started to gain. So XQD and CFast, basically from Sony and Compact Flash Association, they shook hand together. Now they are making Compact Flash basically Extreme. So CFast Extreme or CFast Express. Express will be simply basically physically size of XQD, but software coding and all that would be from CFast Express. So basically what happened to CFast 2.0? Yeah, it died out. So that creates a problem. Right now a 256 gigabyte CFast Express card is around $1,000, sometimes $2,000, and you can't even get big ones. So that creates a problem, because this camera is so high density in terms of video recording. It can require upwards of 3 terabyte per hour. Now imagine, let that sink in. 3 terabyte of data, 3 terabyte of hard drive you have to buy just to record 1 hour of it. Of course, that's a maximum setting it can do, but you get the idea. So doing that on CFast, you are basically like I checked the PDF from the Blackmagic itself, and they are showing 16-minute recording time, 20-minute recording time at 256 GB card. Now 256 GB card is very expensive. 512, good luck with that. 1 terabyte, yeah, please try. So flat out using CFast, back in the version 1, that's not an issue, because that time everybody thought it will become a big deal, but this time they had the chance to fix it. So you have to understand that when the first came out, everybody was like, simply was not buying it. So somebody created a Kickstarter where they can just simply take CFast to SSD, because you have to understand CFast is basically SATA with lower power consumption, nothing fancier about that. So you can directly connect the cables and it will work. So they did that. Now this company created something very awesome. Now in second generation, Blackmagic knows this, that people need SSDs for recording this kind of high detail. They need this. Blackmagic itself, not somebody else, not third party, Blackmagic themselves create docks that are very amazing, and they are built for SSD offloading. Basically you will take SSD from your card or your Black Ninja, and you just plug it into it. It will copy the file and create a backup file. So that's there. Like they know SSD is the medium of choice, because per gigabyte cost is amazingly low, comparatively speaking. Compared to SQD, it's free. Compared to CFast, it's free. Compared to anything else, it's basically free. And it does work. They know the fact. Now, here's the problem. The implementation they did here is really bad, simply because now you will get less clutter. You will simply have block up the SDI output. Here's the deal. At this point in time now, you cannot do broadcasting because SDI is blocked up, and you have only one SSD. This is also crucial, because if you want to record at 4.5K, like raw, like the rawest raw you can get out of this camera, there is no media that can absorb it. So what they do is basically using 2 CFast card. What they will do is like take one frame in one, another frame in one. So that way they divide the bit rate, and normal cards can handle it. Now that's amazing. But if you buy this from Blackmagic itself, the flat out, the moment you try to record directly something, let's say 60 frames per second, half of the settings will be disabled, basically because it will not have enough bandwidth. However, you can buy this right now, basically CFast to SD card system, and this will allow you to get that, because now you can put 2 SD card, 2 SSDs, and you can directly do that 60 frames per second, and it will do alternate. So that way you can use normal SSD without needing to buy something like top of the line SSDs. So that was also Another benefit of that, because there is two, you can do a continuous swap. Basically, you will let one SSD to fill up. Once it's fills up, you will put a blank one. The moment the blank one starts to fill up, during that time you can drain the data from the first drive. Let that way. So that way you can do continuous. Now, why would you want to do that? Let's say you are live streaming something high end, let's say a sports event or something like that, and you're using 12G SDI and all that. Again, that SDI is much more compressed compared to what the data you can get out of your SSD. So using this hardware, which directly plugs between the battery plate and the camera body itself, you can put two SSDs. Side effect, your LCD will not close, but it's pretty awesome. That way, like, I cannot recommend you to buy this camera without buying this. You have to buy this, and I have provided the video down below where you can see all the first generation Kickstarter tool in action versus this. And it does not have global shutter. Now, that's not too much of an issue for 99% of people, but if you are something who are specific for wildlife and you do something where you're moving the camera itself too much, please be aware of that. It is not global shutter. If you want to do those sort of things, buy a camera that has global shutter. It is necessary for, especially for broadcasting industry, they will not allow you to have a camera that swaps too much and it goes yellow. So please be aware of that. Now, that's not an issue for 99% of people, but I do like to mention it. However, that SSD part is really frustrating, and they know it. Like, they themselves make the hardware. Why the heck they are creating such a lame hardware? Like, this is a cheap third-party hardware which is much more better. Like, that should not be. The third-party hardware should only be cheaper and poorer quality. This is like, oh yeah, I can do much more. It's like, what? So that is like one bad design. I think the sole reason they did that is they didn't want to redesign the chassis. The chassis would become a bit bigger, but this is the one thing that like limits this camera. One thing. So this was my presentation on basically Blackmagic URSA Mini Pro 4K G2. I hope I took the name properly, but I hope you liked it, learn from it. In that case, please click a like button. If you didn't like it, don't worry about it. You can press dislike. I would urge you to press it twice to show me your extra disappointment, and please leave a comment because I reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, check my other videos in this channel because there are a lot of them. And as always, thanks for watching.